I've been told that I'm moderating a panel session on data centers and internet exchange points. On that panel, we have Folu Aderibigbe, Sales Director, Rack Center. A round of applause for him, please. We have Mohammed Rudman, CEO, Internet Exchange Point of Nigeria. We have also Dr. Krish Ranganath from Africa Data Centers. A round of applause for him as he makes his way from the coffee pot. We also have Dr. Ayotunde Koka, who will be joining us remotely. I understand it's going to be audio only for him right now. And I believe we also have Ike Namani of Medallion Communications. Welcome, sir. Thank you, gentlemen. Tell you guys a secret. We're here today primarily because of these data center and interconnection folks. They're the reasons, or they are the reason why we're here. They've paid for this lovely place, all of the food, AC, connectivity. Okay, I see the network operator guys disagree. The network operators don't agree, right? Okay, so through the course of the next 40 minutes, maybe, we'll try to understand what is it that is driving people to build data centers all over the place. We hear somebody's constructing here, somebody's expanding here, somebody says my data center is full, so obviously there's some form of demand. I'd like to have the panelists introduce themselves and share a little bit about what they do. You've heard some of us talk over the course of the last 1.5 days, but it'd be good for those who are just coming in to know who's on the panel, what they do in a few minutes, and then we'll start the conversation. I'd like to point out that this is a conversation that would like to have go on with all of us in the room. So we will have roving mics and someone keeping track of any comments or questions that will come up as we discuss, just to make it richer. We're here to learn from one another and see how we can build an ecosystem that really is sustainable. And even though we are competing in some respects, we want something that, as a friend of mine would say, grows the pie and it's bigger. So while we take a slice each, we're taking more than we would have taken with a small pie with an ecosystem that's not as rich. So I would start from my right.
Okay, introductions, right? Okay,
yes, sir.
My name is Mohammed Rodman. I'm the CEO of Internet Exchange Point of Nigeria, as well as the president of Nigerian Internet Registration Association, the .ng CCTLD custodians. At IXPN, we the exchange point, and I believe everyone here knows what an exchange point is. So thank you so much. Thank you, Dewale.
A round of applause for him, please. And to my left, my immediate left.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Folu Aderibigbe. I'm the sales director with Rack Center. Thank you.
I guess some of us would like to know what Rack Center does.
Okay, that's fine. So we are the premier Tier 3 carrier-neutral data center established in Nigeria. And we've been in existence since 2013. with 9 years of 100% uptime. I think that is something we gladly want
bad.
to, yeah.
Okay, and
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dr. Krish. I head the West African operations for Africa Data Centers. As the name stands, we are a data center service provider, a Pan-African service provider rather, currently operating in South Africa, Nigeria, and Kenya, and some expansions in pipeline. Thank you.
a round of applause for him as well. Okay, so let's get into it. What really, now, most of us here might not need to get a definition for what a data center is, but in the context of the Nigerian ecosystem, what would we say like data centers look like? I would ask, one moment, please. I'm very sorry. We have one more panelist who is remote. Dr. Ayotunde, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, great. My name's Ayotunde Koka. I'm the CEO of Open Access Data Centers. That's Pan-African locations in South Africa, about 26 edge locations, one in Durban, Johannesburg, and two in Cape Town coming up. A mega data center building out in Lekki, where we've landed Equiano, and also that's ready for service this month, expanding on a 4-hectare site. Just wanted to I heard you talk about competition earlier on, and I just wanted to make a point to build on what Dean said earlier on. You know, we leave competition at the door, and I think Johnson mentioned that as well. It's really how we build the digital infrastructure in Nigeria and also in Africa. We raise the tide, it raises all boats, and the ones with the big ships have enough water to float gracefully. So we have a collective aim really to drive the converged digital infrastructure of data centers, connectivity, IXs, and global interconnectivity on the continent. Delighted to be here. Thank you very much.
A round of applause for him, please. Thank you, Ayotunde, for helping us put it into perspective like that. And that would kind of take us into a conversation that started, again, referring to the previous session. And one of the things we heard was data sovereignty. And for me, it triggered a different way of looking at the data sovereignty topic as regards data centers and the usage of data centers. Now, I'd like to ask Mohammed, being one of the, I think amongst all of us here, he's in some form or another, he's customizing more data centers than the rest of us. What do you think about the whole data sovereignty thing and the impact on the digital infrastructure? Dean had mentioned something about looking at it from the opportunities side and also from the infrastructure growth side.
When you talk about data sovereignty, are you talking about domestication of data?
Yes, domestication, having your data within the same geographical boundary.
Yes, yeah. So the opportunities are there. Internet, the cost of internet is directly proportional to the content that is local within a country, because as long as the information you're browsing, it's far away, there has to be a cost associated to that. So for most of the countries that have the cheapest bandwidth is because there is domestication of their data. And that domestication, when you talk about data sovereignty, is for all government critical infrastructure services to be run within the country. So for the federal government side, they are supposed to be leading the way in terms of data sovereignty. Unfortunately, is only around 80% of the government agencies that have adopted, for example, the .ng as a domain. And then when it comes to hosting, substantial part of the major big organizations in government are actually hosting some within Nigeria with Galaxy backbone, but there are some exceptions. I don't want to mention name, but they are really big and they are hosting their information outside Nigeria. So what does that portend is that if we are to bring that back, it will really help the country. As we speak, some of those government agencies are paying huge amounts of USD, considering the current constraint on the dollars and the capital flight that is moving out. I think they should lead the way in terms of bringing their data just for data sovereignty. In terms of domestication of data, generally at IXPN, we have seen the growth in the last 15 years from almost 1% of the traffic that is domesticated to right now at IXPN for most of the service providers that are connected to around 60% of the domestication of that data. Why? Because most of the major big content players are actually peering at the exchange point. So if you look at it, some of those big players in the world have the substantial part of the internet traffic. And as long as you have those, you have the content domesticated. But what about, for example, people that are registering domains under the .ng? Substantial part of that, especially we have what is called NIRA registrars, the ones that are buying domain from .ng and reselling it to the end users called the registrants. We realize that substantial part of the NIRA registrars are actually hosting outside Nigeria. So the opportunities are huge for Nigeria, but it's only if we can find a way to collaborate to scale. As Dewale said, it's about competition. We compete publicly and we collaborate privately, and we need to find a way to increase the size of the pie. So I keep telling the NIRA registrars to see how they can collaborate together instead of smaller, part of them having 5, 10, 20 servers. Why don't they come together and scale within these data centers? I don't know whether I've addressed part of the things you have raised in terms of data sovereignty or not. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. Does anyone else want to contribute something or see it from a different perspective?
Well, thank you, Dewale. Thank you, Mohammed, for the contribution. I think my own perspective will be to look at it from an economic, social, and maybe what I call an efficiency point of view. If you look at it from an economic point of view, of course, there are benefits and advantages it brings in terms of costs, which, of course, Mohammed also mentioned the hard-earned foreign exchange, which companies have to put in to try and mine the data. If you also look at it from a social point of view, I think it's just natural that if you mine data from my compound, there should also be some social justification of how you grow that environment so that the benefits also trickles down to those who live in that environment. And of course, you have to look at it from a latency point of view. So when you have data centers, someone was mentioning to me earlier on in the session that, we're beginning to have proliferation of data centers. Well, I don't want to look at it like that. I could remember when the GSM companies came in. They were announcing their presence in cities. It was following a particular pattern. So when they launched, they all launched from Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt. And then nobody launched in all the 36 states of the Federation or all the 774 local governments of the Federation. So naturally, you see a kind of dense population of data centers coming up, particularly in Lagos, and of course, beginning to start expanding out into smaller, which of course would have a trickling down effect on the economy. So I think it's a good sign, and I think there are areas of collaboration, and as technology evolves, we will begin to see those benefits really in quantum levels. Right now is more or less still restricted to the hyperscalers, the CDNs, the enterprises, and so on and so forth. And I think government enacting the regulators, for example, when it comes to sovereignty of data is also very good because it touches on those three critical segments which I just mentioned in terms of helping improve the economy both socially and of course helping in terms of economic and of course the efficiency aspect of it. That would be my own thought process to the whole thing. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot for that, Folu. I will latch on to something that you just said. You mentioned proliferation of data centers. And so we have you, we have Dr. Krish, we have Dr. Ayotunde. Looks like doctors become data center folks. But we'll talk about proliferation in a moment. And either one of you that wants to talk about, like, what do you see as the volume of data centers, the number of data centers that we have, the volume of power that we're going to be able to support with these data centers? What is enough? At what point would it get? You said mobile networks, everybody launched in Lagos and then they started to move out. So at what point, and Mohammed, I know that you have some thoughts about that as well. At what point do we say, okay, Lagos, we're done. We want to move to other places. You know, the same way we've said that let's do it in Nigeria, let's do it in Lagos so that it's closer to the users. You will get to a point where Lagos is not close enough anymore. Somebody who is in Kano, in Enugu, is looking for a fraction of a millisecond to get to what he wants. So those who are investing in the space, you want to talk about at what point is it enough? Maybe Dr. Krish, your company's got data centers in multiple locations, right? You mentioned multiple countries. What kind of plans should we be looking at?
For Nigeria, this time, we are looking at Lagos as usual. Because of the volume of traffic, exchanges in Lagos is too big a number, correct? And of course, expansion out of Lagos is a thought process, and we need to look at other cities because, as I always mention, Lagos is not Nigeria. 24 million is not Nigeria, which is hardly 10% of the population we are talking about. But of course, there is revenue that is everybody is looking for. But the remaining 170 million population, maybe 50% of them have an access to internet. We need to look at that as the great audience, which we need to bring them onto the system. Even though they are in the network as on today, are they getting a good quality of internet to access the content? That is a question goes. Because we all experience this when we travel to various states. Once you leave the state capital, you really don't get any good access, correct? You can't even open basics of even Google. So this is an issue which we need to look at. It's not only data center, it's an ecosystem, correct? So it's data center, connectivity need to come together, and the capacity building and planning. So if this comes together, then across, all our states and this 200 plus million population gets an access into the content, and which is a great thing. And the expansion of any data center is based on that progression, because eventually there is a huge capital investment going on to it.
Right. Thanks, Dr. Krish. Mohammed, you want to share thoughts?
Okay. The data centers are coming into Nigeria right now. They said huge amount, right? But based on the discussions earlier this morning, there is only capacity of around 30 to 50 megawatts. And we have 200 million people. South Africa has 60 million people. We are 3 times South Africa, and they have 200 megawatts of, power. They said in the data centers. They are almost 10 times the size of Nigeria when it comes to data centers. What happened for them to have those data centers? 2 things. One is the connectivity. Right now in Nigeria, you know that Google is bringing Equiano, and Facebook are also on their way to bringing capacity. Why are they bringing capacity when already there is an existing capacity? Honestly, the more connectivity you have, the more data centers will flourish. The typical example they said is like a crossroad. The more crossroads you see in a city or in a town along the way, the more traffic is passing through there and the more potential that area will grow. You will see a filling station being set up. Before you know it, there is a mechanic center. Before you know it, trailers are parking. There is a motel, and it grows and it scales. So the same thing for data centers. The more connectivity into the country, the cheaper the cost, the more data centers will establish. So in Nigeria right now is more of Lagos because all the submarine cables are here and all the connectivity is taking place in Lagos. When is it going to happen in other locations? It's when you have very cheap transmission capacity between Lagos and Kano, for example. As we speak, the cost of transmission capacity between Lagos and Kano is almost equivalent or even higher than the cost of transmission capacity for the same capacity between Lagos and London. Unless we drop that, you will not see data centers springing up in other locations across Nigeria. And for that to happen, there has to be a government intervention. And that government intervention is they decided to go infraco, to have Galaxy backbone that will have a national backbone, open access. Unless we succeed in that, honestly, I don't see data centers springing up in other locations. Connectivity, that's one. The second one is power. The major challenge is that if you're running a data center in Nigeria, you are running on electricity. And electricity, before now, the diesel cost is reasonable. Everybody knows the increase of diesel cost in the last 1-2 years. It's really expensive with all the maintenance. So as a country, as a nation, we must realize that electricity is the backbone of the entire economy. As we speak, since independence, we are just trying to achieve 5,000, 6,000 megawatts. In Egypt, in the last 6 years, they generated 30,000 megawatts. That is 6 times what Nigeria has generated since independence. And that's why they are able to scale. So without that, we will not see the growth. So government needs to take it seriously to see how they can get power. South Africa has electricity, and therefore almost all the data centers are running on public electricity. Generators are only acting as backup. When we have data centers in Nigeria that are permanently running on generators, and some of them do not even have direct electricity connected to them. I don't know whether Folu will tell you something about that, but they are running permanently on diesel. And if we are to scale, that has to be solved. Sorry, one last leg is that what I see in Nigeria is that if you look at the population that are on the internet, roughly around, they said, is it 150 million? And almost 44% of the population, around 80-something million, are on broadband. When you look at NCC statistics, out of that 150 million, only less than 1 million are on fixed wired and fixed wireless. And when you talk about your mobile devices, because 97% of Nigerians that are browsing on their mobile devices. And there is limitation on mobile devices because you cannot connect it to your TV. If you connect it to your laptop, it will be, because almost everything is data capped. But for the fixed wired and fixed wireless, there is no cap. And I was just talking to somebody, the Amazon person this morning. He said in some countries, they have seen that 97% of the traffic comes from fixed and only 3% comes from 97% comes from mobile, only 3%, from 97% comes from fixed and only 3% comes from mobile. But in Nigeria, is the case. So we need to find a way to encourage community networks. We need to find a way to get these fixed wired and wireless networks across Nigeria because that will enable huge bandwidth consumption. If you really want bandwidth consumption, you need to do it. At home, when I had fixed data capacity subscription, there's always a problem. You try to manage, but when I have a fiber at home now, I don't really control it and I'm consuming a lot of data. It's when you're consuming a lot of data that you start seeing data centers springing up for that consumption. Thank you so much. Sorry if I'm taking your time. Thank you.
It's okay. I have my own mic. Ayotunde, any thoughts to share?
Yeah, thank you very much. Hope you can hear me well.
Yes.
First of all, on data sovereignty, if you look at the Europe, it's GDPR. Europe-wide. In the US, North America, same thing. I think if we look at sovereignty country by country in Africa, we're over-fragmenting things. We ought to look at serious data sovereignty as an Africa-wide thing. This should be one of those things that the Africa Continental Free Trade Area should look at and address, and I've been asserting on the presidential committee on the digital aspects of AFCFTA. You see, if we look at sovereignty Africa-wide, it means, therefore, that we can take a more holistic approach. But there are practical reasons, latency. So what that means is that we can store data in South Africa or in Nigeria and serve it to anywhere in Africa. However, practical reasons mean we will have the mega locations, and we will also have other MIDI locations where you have medium-sized data centers. So that's the approach we're taking at Open Access Data Centers. So in Kinshasa, for instance, we're coming up with a MIDI coming Q1 next year, and that will have its own drag on a pool of scale of sorts as part of an interconnected ecosystem. And if we have it Africa-wide, we can then make sure also that certain countries will have a certain right kind of scale for digital infrastructure. I use the term digital infrastructure because it's not just data centers. It's a combination of data centers, interconnectivity, the IXs that we have as a whole, and a few other things. So that's my assertion for data sovereignty. We need to look at it holistically. And also holistically, a few things are happening. I think we have around about 80%. The ISOC statistic recently localized data across different locations in Africa. So some progress is being made there, although we have a huge opportunity if we deal with this as an Africa issue. Two, data centers across Nigeria. OADC will be opening at least 10 other data centers across the country over the next 2 years. In South Africa, we have about 27 edge data centers now. And that's building and driving an ecosystem of delivery on, aggregating ISP traffic closer to the edge. Very importantly, 5G and 5G penetration. And you'll see that increase in Nigeria as we have 5G penetration around Lagos, and so on. So, and just to build on what Mohammed Rodman has said, if you look around the country, there are data concentration points right now. Osogbo, Ibadan, Kano, Port Harcourt, around Edo State. Those are areas where we will, and you have power concentration points as well at those points. So we will innovate and drive proliferation of edge data centers across Nigeria. When you do that, that means you drive data concentrations, you drive data movement, and there's an economic case to reduce the pricing of data traffic. So that is what you will see coming out, I believe, over the next 2 years. And that move would then make others start to think, oh, I better start to distribute data centers across the country. And that will happen. Like Krish said, there are data center distributions across Africa starting to happen now. You'll probably find about 3 players, really provide the Africa scale as a whole. But I see even within other countries, you start to see that scale come true. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ayotunde. From what you contributed and what Mohammed said earlier, you mentioned transmission as one of the keys. And now I know that we agreed that this was going to be a discussion with all of us, right? Yes or yes? No, including you, audience participation. Because, okay, you're hesitant to say yes now because I said transmission before asking the question. Okay, Folu, your background, I know you were involved in core telecommunications for a while. What do you think is the reason it's hard for us to crack this transmission problem? Do you have any ideas as to why the costs are inordinate as we speak? Now, I like that I'm excited that OADC says within the next 2 years, they are bringing up, 10 data centers across the country. Now, maybe that would help us start thinking about the micro, smaller scale connecting. So, transmission, what do you think the issues could be, and what could we do to change that?
Okay, thanks, Dewale. I think the major challenge really is the sincerity of government. Over the years, we've had different fora, discussions by both all stakeholders and government on how to, should I say, improve transmission network across the country. And issues surrounding ROW, right-of-way, vandalism of infrastructure, road construction were some of the issues that did come up. I also do believe that at those fora, there were certain communique that came out of how to proceed to solve the issues at hand. And which is why I said it's mainly government sincerity that could help us out. You still have state governments today who are charging very exorbitant charges on right-of-way fees. You still have situations where infrastructure is laid out and the same government, even with all the documentation at hand, go in there with their heart-moving equipment and rip up this infrastructure that is already laid on ground. That's an extra cost. Who's going to bear that? You also have situations of vandalism, insecurity. I mean, to patrol and maintain some of this infrastructure in these zones is not secure. There's a lot of kidnapping and so on and so forth going on of personnel. So when the fiber infrastructure itself even goes down, the turnaround time for your personnel to go in there to fix it is also a challenge. So there are a lot of myriad of issues that surround we getting to that next step. Because like all the previous speakers mentioned, for us to start having data centers built around the country, it also has to be, should I say, premeditated by connectivity, by transmission. That's the only way I think we can, because at the end of the day, what it matters most is return on investment. Except government now says, you know what, we are going to be coming in with heavy subsidies to try and make sure, because it's also about your GDP growth. Because in those neighborhoods, access to technology, access to data is also either going to help the farmer on ground or it's going to help the little enterprises on ground and so on and so forth. I mean, Mohammed was sharing some statistics about the prevalence of people browsing on their mobile phones, right? So that is also a feature we have to think about in the midst of power challenges that you have, you understand, in terms of, the computer literacy and so on and so forth in those areas. So it's a challenge. So for me, I think the how to get it done is there. But it's the will and determination to get it done that is a challenge. It's not as if we don't have the solution at hand, but I think it's the sincerity of purpose of all stakeholders, particularly government, that really matters in this case. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Folu. So, sincerity of purpose, and you say specifically on the part of the government. I would assume that the high costs that we see on connectivity, now my background is internet service provision, at least before I started shifting towards data centers and now search engine kind of stuff. The cat video guy laughs. Now, I know that in there, people with their network engineer, network operator affiliations see things a little differently from what the data center folks or the end users see. I'm learning every day. Right here today, I've seen something else. Digging up of cables and ducts in the name of construction, piling extra costs on the network operators. So the transmission folks are saying that these are the reasons why these things or the prices are not coming down for connectivity. My question is, what are the penalties? And that's to all of us in the room. What are the penalties for disrupting businesses that way?
Sorry, Dewale, just to mention, beyond that, you have to look at the volatility of the foreign exchange of the naira, because the input, all this we're talking about is all imported. I mean, you're talking about fiber, you're talking about the ducts. There's nothing we practically manufacture here. So the volatility of the naira is also something you have to take into consideration as a cost.
So it seems that this is not a data center discussion or panel, but it's rather a total digital infrastructure, digital economy thing. And we need to look at it beyond just the buildings, the power, the cooling, and who can attract which big hyperscale player to their facility. What can we do? Any thoughts there on what exactly we can do to help? He's talked about production. Like, there's so many things that we can look at. There's the fact that we're producing or we're importing and not producing. What can we do to help?
Can I add to this, please?
Yes,
right?
please.
Because
Come in.
earlier days when you have, say, a rack center setting a bar on quality and scale for digital infrastructure, it pulls all of the, others along with respect to what we're doing. We started a momentum with getting data center space in there. We have around about some 8 or so, 10 megawatts hanging around right now. In just the next 2 to 3 years, we'll have about 50 megawatts. If we let the issues stop us doing the things we need to do, we never will. So the issues are there. We have to drive forward and continue to build the digital infrastructure penetration of connectivity, data centers, the internet exchanges, cloud-based platforms, and all of that. And then we'll tackle these issues strategically, but also tactically as we go along. So, of course, we have to work with these issues. Of course, we need to address these issues. Of course, we need to take them into account. But let them not be the things that will stop us doing the things that we have to do. Else, we won't have the highest volume of mobile network customers on the continent right now. Amazing innovation in getting the penetration, and Fulu, of course, is part of that transformation, of getting the volumes. And if you look at South Africa with mobile telephony, it was way ahead of Nigeria 15, 20 years ago. Now, it's just a totally different scale in Nigeria. My hypothesis and assertion is the fact that the same thing will happen with data centers, in that we will be bigger than even the cow of Joburg, right? Lagos will be bigger than Joburg, coming to the next 5 to 10 year timescales. And that will then start to get us to get through some of these issues, right? Breaking through some of the issues. And we will succeed in getting the infrastructure in place. And probably same thing with what Mohammed Rodman has been doing. With the more data centers coming across Nigeria, I think he and I will be talking a bit more about other locations where we can host IXPs on the continent. So these issues are there, but I think they're there for us to break down. They're there for us to continue to chart a progress. They're there for us to look at how we can leapfrog in different areas. And finally, you see, with Equiano coming, Google's Equiano and Meta's to Africa, there's capacity there already. There's some serious strategic thinking going on there, I'm sure, because it probably means that we're going to be having data going out the other way rather than data coming into Africa. So there's going to be some serious hosting of capacity that's going to happen in time for those cables to achieve what they've been intended to achieve strategically. Some of it is social, some of it is strategic, some of it is getting connectivity out to Africa, which is fantastic. But on our part, we also need to build the connectivity into the heart of Africa, get that broadband penetration going in. And then you see a distributed base of data centers. But I really do think, coming back to Nigeria, that we can, despite the issues we have, create, and we will do, create significant scale of data centers to support the significant scale of cloud that we need. You see, cloud, African economies tend to do, I call them the sachet economies. People don't buy pints or quarts of milk, they buy sachets. Cloud is the one where you can drive sachets of technology for use at the endpoint, just like the pay-as-you-go for mobile phones. As you get these business models right, you'll see a huge scale in adoption of cloud and digital penetration.
Thank you very much, Ayatunde. And I do agree 100% that we need to continue to build. But while we're doing that, we should not lose sight of the things that are problems and how we can solve them. Not listing them out just to complain about them, but how can we work in that environment that we find ourselves? How can we improve the environment for business? Dr. Chris, you've been thinking very hard about this.
No. See, if you look at any growing economy, these are the normal things comes across. Correct. So we had to face it and we had to move on. And we had to find ways to overcome these challenges. And this is part and parcel of the whole industry. It is not only applicable for Nigeria. If you go to any growing economy, it's the same situation. There's no meaning in complaining on this and no meaning in be pointing fingers on the government or any agency or anything. We need to get it done. If we need to work it, we need to get it done. So we need to find ways around it. That is what it is. That means, some majority of us need to come together, work around it strategically and get things moving in with various partnerships and alignments. Because else, this will be always a discussion point in all the forums without an action. So that step we need to just, move on. Change that speed a bit, change the gear a bit, move into the next level so that we find solutions. If transmission is always a problem, power is always a problem, correct? So this is, another aspect, I may be wrong, please, the audience can also correct me. Or are we too much looking at the European market or the global market and saying that, okay, this is happening, why it is not happening in Nigeria or Africa? Or are we taking it in a bit of extra speed to get into that level when our infrastructure, the fundamental infrastructure itself is not ready? Because when we compare various infrastructures at a global level, we are comparing with the 100% or 200% grown countries, correct? Where everything is available there. Do we have it here? Or how long we need to take to put that infrastructure in place? So there are multiple aspects to be looked at. We can dream about things, but what is there on the ground as on today? That is what we need to look at. And then from there, what we can do tomorrow to extend that into other parts. Okay, let's come back to our own area of transmissions. Okay, Lagos, we have a decent coverage of metros and fiber. If you go out of Lagos, which other state has more than 30% to 35% coverage? Very minimal, correct? Everybody is going back into the mobile networks. This is the fact on the ground. So how we can fix it? Who are the players in the regional level can come together and try to fix those things? It is a process. That process has to, the issue is what I'm seeing is that there are solutions, there are discussions, which is on the paper. And some projects went maybe 20%. After that, it slowed down. So that drive need to be there behind every discussion, every process, every project, so that we get into at least nearing completion. So if we are able to get that, it's a matter of time where we can have the same kind of infrastructure, where we are comparing with.
Okay, thank you for helping us look at it that way. Now, as I said earlier, this is not just a data center panel, but let's see it as a solution provision interaction between all of the players. There are problems, right? Then there are opportunities as well. So it looks like we're pretty familiar with the problems because we're living them every day. Even without being a data center operator, you know what's happening to you with power, roads, security, and all of that stuff. Now, what are the opportunities? Your interventions have been like taking me in circles, kind of like spinning in my head because there's this here, there's that here that we can actually talk about and we can look at how can we fix it. Now, almost every month there's some form of discussion like this going on. And as you all have said, how do we take these discussions to the point where they become solutions? Who is willing to commit? Earlier on, Mokon pointed out that we will talk, but we need to take action. Dr. Krish also just mentioned that we need to identify players. So if we're operating in the same space, who? Now, this is not for blaming or naming and shaming, but really, what few things, if we changed them, would help make this better for us? Now, this is making it better for us at the level that we're operating now, but also at the level that we should be operating at. Yes, it's fine to look at these more developed economies and say, okay, we're not yet at that particular point. But when you look at what do we have? We have people, we have brains, we have businesses and opportunities, again, that people want to take advantage of because they talk about us being a mobile-first economies on this side of the planet. So the reality is the same things that people who have wired lines, in fact, you can probably take advantage of more things than those who are using wired communications and have had established infrastructure over the years. Anyway, let me stop rambling. What are those things? Can we crowdsource from all of us here? Yes, sir. So, mic for the gentleman over there, and another one, and another one. Okay, so we'll try to keep it. I don't know how we're doing for time, but I'd really like it to be that at the point that we're living here, we establish linkages among ourselves here. Now, we've been doing the networking and at the coffee breaks and at the bilaterals, but we really need to set something up. We know how we do it here. It's a WhatsApp group. Okay. Mohammed.
Okay, if I may say so, the problem with these challenges, they are multifaceted, multidimensional. There is no one single place you can get the solution. So, for example, there are local governments that are troublemakers. If they are not here, whatever you want to do, it will not be solved. There are state governors that are insisting on IGR. They are looking for revenue in their states to survive, and they see the telcos as cows. As long as they are not here to really understand the impact of broadband, they will not really change. So we as people here cannot solve that problem. There are people that have mentality of, okay, if they see a cable being dug, they thought it's a copper cable. They'll go and remove it, thinking that they can go and sell it and make money. That one is what? Education. They need to be sensitized on the impact of what they are doing. So as I said, it's multifaceted. Some is state, federal, government, and all that. But we need to have a champion in the nation that will really, really drive this. Then all these issues and bottlenecks can be resolved. Because I'm trying to understand what you are trying to achieve with the audience. Can we come up with really a solution? When Folu mentioned attacks, insecurity in some locations, there's a fiber cut, and then people are scared to go and fix those fiber. Who is responsible for that? We have identified critical national resources in Nigeria. What have we done about it to protect those critical national resources? So it's multifaceted, as I said, honestly, and there has to be a champion. To me, the champion has to be maybe the president of the country to take leadership and ownership and ensure that ICT is there to flourish by talking to all the relevant stakeholders and bringing everybody on board. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mohammed. So now in the course of trying to identify solutions, you've identified a problem and you have brought one solution forward, which is to make the president a champion. And I believe that was part of where the designation of critical national infrastructure was going, which is make the leaders of the country responsible for all protection of all of these things. But we won't let the fact that there are different problems from different areas preclude us from doing the work that we can do. We will not be able to get all the state governors together in the room to agree that this is what we can do. But if we start to tackle these things individually from where we are, where we can reach, and if we're thinking about it, now, very likely we won't get the solutions like one silver bullet that takes care of everything. We won't get any such solution here. But as we solve individual problems and we share, because I might be on the way to solving a problem thinking, okay, this is how I'm going to do it, and I will take care of myself. But if I reach out to you and say, hey, we have the same problem, does it look like this? Of course, competitive advantage. Now you hold one behind. Now you won't bring everything out, right? But at least the ones that are really glaring, we can work together to solve those ones. So I don't know what the solution is, but I think that acting within the areas that we have influence would at least help us move some things. Whether my action is to build another facility in some place that somebody thinks is not yet viable, my action might be to talk to somebody who's providing me service or providing someone I know service. Can you help us improve quality this way or that way? My action might be to take the number of someone who I can say, oh, I see digging equipment in this particular area, then the risk of damage to your cable infrastructure might be increased and I can just find some way. I don't know what it is, but how can we, because even when you designate Mr. President, somebody needs to give him input like, Oga, perhaps you can consider looking at this or that. I know there are communiques, there are reports and stuff, right?
No, this is why we are here, to engage, and we will solve one problem at a time. So if we are able to achieve something here, for example, if the operators are willing to collaborate by just engaging here, we have achieved something, because that collaboration will solve some of the issues and some of the bottlenecks. Yes.
All right, thanks.
Okay. So I think in contribution to all that has been said, you see, for me, you need those issues to be at your forefront. But it does not stop you from achieving your objective moving forward. Definitely, you must not allow it to cow you. No doubt about that. I mean, yesterday, Mr. Folayan was on this stage talking about some of the progress being made by the Anambra state government. Right? There are pockets of those states, through education, through sensitization, the principals of those states are not looking at a short-term view, but are looking at it from a long-term view of what the benefits will be to that state. Most often than not, we don't have that visionary leadership that is going to look beyond the immediate and begin to put plans, policies in place that even during the tenure of your government, you may not reap the benefit, but you've already established a process by which 10 years, 20 years down the line, it's going to be to the benefit of every of the citizens. I mean, when Dr. Krish was talking about having to look at the developed countries, I seem to have a different view. I mean, some of us have been to Rwanda. We eulogize Rwanda with what they've done within so short a time. That's a country that came out from a civil war, which was very devastating. They had their issues. We look at Dubai. I mean, don't let's even talk of Dubai. When did Dubai get to where it is today? But there was visionary leadership. So I think at the end of the day, education, sensitization, but we must not lose view of those issues that are prevalent. Because as we go along the line, of course, the solutions are there, like I said. We know what to do. But it's just the will and determination to get it done. That's what's most important.
Okay. So the sensitization and the will. I see that you're very convinced that the will needs to be there in the leadership. And I'm sure a lot of us are convinced too. We had 3 hands over there. Very quick interventions. Starting from 1, the gentleman in white here, that was the first hand I saw go up. And that is 2, and that is 3 at the back there. White. Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Aminu Abdullahi. I just wanted to bring a suggestion that can bring a solution to the telecoms industry. I was once engaged with some academic works, readings, and so on and so forth. We lean construction, something like that. That is a concept whereby one industry can borrow lessons from another industry on finding solutions. Lean construction, for example, the construction industry try to adopt lessons from the manufacturing sector. Like, we're in construction, how it's done, it's not like manufacturing lines. So how do you do other to eliminate waste and so on and so forth? That's a lengthy academic discourse, which we are not here for. But my suggestion to the telecom industry is to learn lesson from the power industry in Nigeria. I'll give example, quick example. With NEPA, electricity, all this problem, we can learn lesson from the power sector. The problem of all this right of way, high cost, and other things will all be solved. All these ones that we say leadership, we are in democracy. In one way or the other, as the politicians, whether the governor, the head of the minister, they are very sensitive to what the communities, what the masses need, or what the masses want. So the main problem with the telecom industry is that we need to integrate communities to understand that telecom infrastructure is not for the operators. It is for them. If you do that, they will force the governors to even waive the right of ways. Not only that, to do so many things, to even provide security for the infrastructure. You don't, like NEPA now, I will give an example. You go to a community, you have your fiber or your tower, you have to provide your own security. Because in the community, nobody cares. It doesn't belong to them. It belongs to you. But go and touch the transformer for that community. you know what I mean. Every Nigerian understands what I mean. If you touch that transformer, because the community will protect and they will provide security to that transformer, and they will fight anybody that will come to, tamper with that transformer, because they understand that the electricity belongs to them. They are the primary beneficiaries. But one of the problems of telecom industry is that, like, let me give you an example. Like what one of the discussants said, 97% of the data we use is wireless, 4G, and so on and so forth. No fixed word and fixed wireless is not there, which have been providing most of the telecom. The reverse is the case. But people are not even aware. There is no awareness by the committees that many people don't even know the difference between what is fixed word because it's not available. I used to imagine that if the operators, for example, in one local government headquarters, when they have their own base station, if they can create a hotspot and tell the community that this one is free, come and browse free, even for 1 month or for 6 months. So they will come and be streaming, enjoying it. Then if there is a fiber cut, that community will be the one to fix it. They will provide the security, they will provide the surveillance, and they will also make their local government chairman and even the governor say, see, we have it in that position. We also need that some services here. So the other way around, even the governments, the local governments, we know what is happening. People contribute money. Recently, I participated in such projects where the community we contributed money to provide our electricity, even to purchase our transformers, to purchase the cables, to purchase we all know it. In Nigeria, it happens because people understand that they are the primary beneficiaries for all this infrastructure. So they can even use their money to build the infrastructure. So if telecom can learn from that one and develop a framework, a model, whereby the communities will be integrated, will have the awareness to understand that this infrastructure is not for the operators to make money, but it's for their own primary use. I'm telling you, they will solve many of our problems. They will force the government to bring the right of way down, to provide security, surveillance, even to contribute in the building of the infrastructure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. So I was going to summarize it, but you've summarized it very beautifully. That is to make everybody a stakeholder in one way or the other. And the education should not just be by saying, but for them to experience that stake. Mohammed talked about community networks and things like that earlier as well. So your solution to transmission is that in moving from point A to point Z, instead of complaining that it gets cut off at point B, C, D, E, F, all along the way, drop small of what you are transmitting so that when it's disrupted, they're potentially affected, right? Okay, sir. The next one, please. Let's try to keep it under a minute.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Nuruddin Ibrahim Suleiman, NDID4D. So I noticed on the panel there is the content creator missing, because from yesterday till now we've been saying that one of the reasons why the internet is still expensive in Nigeria is because there's no content. So we have data centers now, but from what I know, most of the people patronizing data centers are the big banks and so on and so forth. Now we're talking about Netflix. I remember in those days, I will need to use a VPN to be able to watch Netflix or Prime Video, AWS. But right now they're here. But they're catch. They're not really here. They're not sitting here. So if we keep opening more and more and more data centers without content in them, what are the content? Because if we don't have someone sitting here to actually let us know why is the version of Nigerian Netflix, why are they not still here? Because what they used to provide for us that we used to watch is now on Netflix. But I can't remember their name. The Nigerian video we used to watch in those days online, they are not here. So if we keep creating data centers and data centers and data centers without the content in those centers, I mean, maybe the data center people will need to probably educate us to know why we have that problem. That's one. Then the other thing is this: even if I want to create, I have content because I've had quite a number of experiences. So I work with some organization, and then government now said, because of data sovereignty, they cannot host this service outside Nigeria. It has to be hosted in Nigeria. Unfortunately, it happened during COVID, when CBN website was being hacked and everything. Now, we decided to use Web for Africa, I can't remember them, and hosted it. In less than 1 day, the website went down. The only option now is to look for something and that will protect that website, like WAF. a web access, web application firewall. But the web application firewall is sitting outside Nigeria. And it was a big argument between the client, the government regulators to try and convince that, okay, fine, we have the data here in Nigeria, but we need something to protect the data from being abused. That is still sitting down there. And most of the time, this WAF will provide CDN. So at the end of the day, you have the data here, but then the traffic most of the time is being served from outside Nigeria. So then it tends to defeat the purpose of actually creating the data here, because here, the reason why you want to hold data here, you tell, okay, it's cheaper and so on and so forth. You don't want to have to buy space or pay for power. You just simply want somebody to provide you something where you can put your content in. So maybe the data center can probably give us some of the reason why we still have those challenges of ensuring that content are localized there. If you go to Dubai, you will never see any company in Dubai having their website as .com. Those is their own TLD they're using. In Nigeria, very, very few. Some will tell you the reason is because Nigeria's something is being blocked and so on. So that's my own contribution. Thank you.
Okay, so Mohammed wants to respond to you on a point, but I want to point out to anybody who is looking for opportunities that he just pointed out that having a locally domiciled web application firewall service provider is something that is going to help move more traffic in here. That's based on what he's said there. Mohammed.
Okay. No, we need more data centers, my brother. Nigeria has 200 million people. As I said, the data center consumption in Nigeria, based on the existing capacity, though they're all willing to expand, is around 30 megawatts. While South Africa has 60 million people and they have 200 or above 200 megawatts. So the more we build infrastructure, the more you'll be able to attract the hyperscalers. It's chicken and egg scenario. You have to build for them to come. So if you said you wait till when there are people that will occupy the data centers for you to build, you will never reach there. You are mentioning Dubai. Dubai built it first, then they attract, right? So you have to build and attract them. The whole objective, honestly, we are trying to make sure that Nigeria, because of our sheer size and the extreme content that we have more content when it comes to digital content than any other African country because of our Nollywood, because of our Kannywood, because of our music industry, because of almost everything. So the idea is, how can we be the hub for West Africa? If you have the hyperscalers in Nigeria, they don't have to be in Ghana. What is the latency between here and Ghana? 20, 15 milliseconds? So, and the objective is, we'll be the hub for internet content in Africa. That's the whole objective. And I'm so happy that they are bringing investment. There is an investment of over $1 billion within the last 12 months into data centers, which almost all of it is coming into Lagos. So please, and all these data centers, we talk about domestication, connectivity. IXPN is trying to be in almost all of them. We're in 7 different locations in Lagos alone, and we have fiber connectivity. So if you are in any of those data centers, there is no worry of your traffic going outside just for it to come back, because IXPN will be there. And even if IXPN is not there, you can find a way to connect to IXPN. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mohammed. Something else to look at. We've looked at the hyperscalers driving the growth in the data centers. Now, hyperscalers did not become hyperscale on day one. People started building small things. And there are small things being built in country today, in the region. What can we do to help those small things grow to hyperscale? That's probably something else for us to think about. There was a hand at the back there, the third gentleman there. And a fourth one on that side.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kenny Diridiji. I'll start from where Ayotunde said. There must be continuous investment. It has to happen. You can't stop. Then Mohammed also referenced something, government, which is one thing we have not stressed enough. I mean, look at the panelists sitting. I haven't seen anybody from strong with voice in government sitting here, listening to what we're saying, listening to the volume of investment. Mohammed again referenced over $1 billion. That is huge. The backbone of digital economy today is what is sitting in this room. This is community. You are the one providing the connectivity, the infrastructure. So without this, there's no digital economy. So what that means, if there is a framework by government on digital economy, then who is lobbying for this community? Who is discussing critical, I'll say, incentives, if I can use that word? Who is pushing that narrative? Can we here build that capacity to engage? I mean, you have agriculture. They get some subsidy, some in some sort of intervention. Here in this room, when you are procuring as an investor, it's dollarized. Your equipment gets to the port, spends how many hours, how many months there. Then the value of taxes on what you're bringing in is also huge. So these are the things this community should negotiate to bring this thing down. And when you are able to control that, obviously, it's good for stakeholders who are investing, of course, from point of cost. And it can also help you to scale. You can bring in more people. And besides that, consumption, the population, educated population in Nigeria is very low. And that's why a lot of people rather use internet on mobile phone than on the system. What are we doing within the education sector and all of that sector that requires technology? And with all of this, but if there is no strong advocacy at the presidency, at that level, it's going to be slow. It's going to be a painful investment. And of course, we will get there, but it's going to be painful. But what can we do in terms of palliative or incentive to make it easy for the entire community? That's my contribution. So, that political engagement, it's strong and it's very necessary on this table. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I did not lose what he said there. While the mic is getting to the fourth person, I think that was it Mukom? But strong advocacy, very correct. I've seen a very diverse group of people in this event over the last 2 days. Mobile network operators, small ISPs still in the process of getting licensed, exchange points, government, state government, telecom regulators. What can we do before we leave this place to ensure that we strengthen our advocacy with the leadership, with the government? Yes, I'm looking for... Why are you standing by the wall?
All right. So, if we go back to when we are sitting here today in the banquet hall of a glamorous hotel. How did this event start? In some dusty back room in the University of Jos. But every year, a group of people took sustained action. One thing every year and made action. And here we are today. Did we make lots of mistakes? Absolutely. I think the thing that is still missing to turn the social capital in this room into something that's going to pay to develop this digital infrastructure we're talking about is a commitment or a structure, whether it's, I would suggest a set of working groups that identify very specific projects that they will work on for a period. Something as simple as, say, influencing someone in the Senate. You would be surprised that all it takes is if you can provide a technical expert to a representative to literally write the paper for them. All they have to do is present it. It might help. But I think maybe we should consider the idea of working groups of no more than 5 people, no more than 7 people, to work on specific things completely online. Maybe that will start moving the needle.
Thank you very much, Mukom. So, who agrees that as an outcome of this, we should have working groups dealing with specific problems? Small, easily actionable, right? So that we can measure the results. Okay. How many hands are in agreement? Okay. half of the room agrees, the remaining half do not agree that working groups are a way to solve the problem.
That's good. See, you don't just need 20% of the people. Those that have put up their hands, show up and put them on the list and get together, start working.
Okay, excellent. So we have one of the people who were in that dusty hall in 2006 where people were gathered, and I think there were working groups. Yes, Reverend Sunday Folayan wants to provide some perspective, and let me not preempt him. Mike over here, please.
So progress is not made when you blow plenty grammar. Progress is made when you know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and sacrifices are made. Yes, I was in the dusty room in Jos, and about tell the story of another dusty room in Abuja. The Internet Service Providers Association of Nigeria wanted to start the Internet Exchange Point. So we got into a room to deliberate with NCC on how IXPN will take off. So many people had worked on engineering design. The late Ndukwe Kalu of blessed memory, and engineer Sam Adeleke, who, by the way, will be buried next tomorrow. May his soul rest in peace. And as discussions were going on, somebody pointed out a technicality. NCC had issued a license to provide internet exchange point in Nigeria to a young man called Ikechukwu Namani. And there was stalemate. Here is the industry association saying we know a way forward, we can do it. And so Ike, as we called him, stood up and said, if my license will start in the way of progress for Nigeria, I hereby submit the license and choose to align with the industry to build the internet exchange point of Nigeria. So I put it on record that man broke a stalemate that day in that room, and IXPN came to be as an industry-led association, not an organization established just by fiat without industry input. So I'd like to put that on record, and I want to also put my weight around what Mukom said, that working groups are very effective because then they are able to show all perspectives and resolve. We like to compete, but behind our competitions are also those pockets of cooperation that leads to progress. So I think we should be mindful of where we are coming from and where we want to go, and sometimes let go, those positions that may advance us, but will not advance the country. And I like to point out that technology is so dynamic that the market share you hold today may be nothing tomorrow. Where is Yahoo? Things just changed, right? And so many industry players that we knew 30 years ago don't exist today. 20 years ago don't exist. So let's focus on building for the future. Yes, there will be dynamics, but we can still come back after 20 years, see what we did in this room today, and then relate it with what happened in the dusty room in Jos 20 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Mike for the gentleman there, then Dr. Koka.
Good afternoon. I'm Jude by name. So far so good. I've been listening carefully to everything we've been saying, but I actually found out that there's something actually missing. We've actually been pointing fingers towards the top, but we're not looking downwards, because I believe if we look at the Western world, part of the things that actually make them what they are today, it's because of collaboration. And that collaboration didn't just start at the top, it started from below. So looking at Africa, Nigeria as a case study, we have ISPs, smaller ones, bigger ones, the MNOs, the telcos, and all that. But one thing that is actually missing in all these things we've been saying is collaboration. We don't collaborate. We compete, but we don't collaborate because we are only driving personal benefits. But we're not driving the growth of the country, and that's why we are stuck where we are today. So I think if all the ISPs, the telcos, the MNOs, the data center operators, and every one of us come together to have a united front, even the government would have a reason to say, oh, these people are united in front of us, and we have to push whatever they are saying to the forefront. Because looking at it, we find our skilled laborers today leaving the country because we don't have a drive for them. We don't have something for them to look back into and say, okay, this is the reason why I should be in Nigeria. This is the reason why I should be in Africa. They want to go to the Western world where they know the system works. But indirectly, we can actually make that also work here if we all can collaborate rather than just competing in public and also competing with ourselves privately. We can compete in public and collaborate in private as well. So I think not just the government alone should be blamed. We should also look inward and try to collaborate within ourselves, and we can actually get the government working with that as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So we are moving beyond pointing blame fingers, and we're moving towards working groups, collaborating to solve problems, and also having strong advocacy now so that the outputs of these working groups get to those who have the power to do things about it at the top, while we also do whatever we can at the bottom or at the other layers, right? Any parting thoughts from all of the panelists here? I know that there's action to be taken, and that action goes beyond the panel here. We need to work out how we deal with the creation of working groups, how we identify those, whether there are 5 or whether there are 7 individuals working to solve a specific problem and reporting. Okay.
Contributions from online. So, if anyone can hear me, contributions from the online gallery.
Okay, one moment. There's a hand here that wants to contribute, possibly towards the wrap-up actions. I had asked if Dr. Coker was available to make a comment. It's possible that he's engaged at this point.
No, this is Adebumi Akimbo.
No, Adebumi Akimbo, please hold on.
Okay.
Yes, please hold on. We'll take Reverend Sunday Folayan. If Ayotunde Coker is available right now to make a comment after Reverend Sunday Folayan, then we'll take your comment, Adebumi Akimbo.
Thank you, Dewale. I wanted to just give us a clue on how lobbying is done and how government is engaged reasonably. And I will do that by publicly asking Mrs. Mary Uduma a question. And the question I want to ask Mrs. Mary Uduma is, Madam, can you give us an insight into why you think Google will appoint Vint Cerf as Chief Internet Evangelist? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much for the question. The first thing I want to say is that Google identified Vin as a committed fellow to the internet, and he had influence. So he had a clout. Not only that, he's a professional, he's a founder of internet, the father of the internet and the rest of them. But he didn't go to sit down. He was part of the process. He continues to. At the time, I met him in ICANN. I think he was the chief, he was something like a chair of the board of ICANN. So he never relented. He continued. And he is committed. He's a committed person. And they believe that he also has the clout. He can speak to any government today. And people are looking forward to him. And he's mentoring other people as well. He's not selfish. He believes in co-opetition, not competition. Co-opetition, that is that he's a collaborator. He shares. He's open. He's a sharing. And internet is a sharing process, a sharing space. You can only succeed in your internet endeavors when you are ready to share. So it's a sharing platform. So like the last speaker said about coming from the bottom to the up, I think that is very, very key. So I believe that when they got him, they felt that he is the right person to be called the evangelist. And he has not stopped speaking about internet, encouraging us to be part of the process and the part of sharing. So I don't know whether I've answered your question. If I've not, do better.
Thank you. I'm satisfied. I just wanted to point out that those who would help our advocacy need not be in this room today. So don't focus on those who are here as those who can take the message out. And let's not only focus on providers. Consumers can be very, very forceful in helping providers and other service providers, content providers get their message out. So let us not just focus on ourselves as the people that will lobby. The voice of lobby could be people that are respected, people that have been impactful, even if they are not currently in the business. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Sunday Falayo. Those that we are identifying here are those who are interested in working towards solving specific problems because they have superior insights or knowledge about what's happening in those areas and are willing to work towards it. So working groups from here, then as we go forward, we decide on how the advocacy will be done. Before I take Dr. Ayotunde Koka, Ayotunde, are you online?
Yes, I am.
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to say that there's, to build on what's been said, there's a lot of advocacy going on. I mean, there's a lot more we need to do. It's great to have this kind of conversation. It sets the issues and the opportunities on the table. So if we put these forward as the opportunities we have for the country and for the industry, the numbers, the metrics, they're just compelling. And I think we'll make a significant amount of progress. It's been a fantastic discussion to listen to on this panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we go to the other panelists, we had someone with a comment. Akimbo.
Thank you, my president. I think I'm in order for using that word. Okay, so it's been a great discussion, and I felt I should contribute my own voice when it comes to data sovereignty. Being a member of the Internet Society Nigerian chapter, and currently the acting chairman for all chapters globally. That's the Chapter Advisory Council, where data sovereignty is actually a key discussion. And fortunately, Africa seems to be the boiling point for growth and development when it comes to such discussion as this. Without taking too much of our time, I would want to look at us paying more attention to, like I contributed in the chat room, building structure by addressing obstacles and challenges around policies. I believe strongly that if we address the issue of policy, and again, taking from what Canon Sunday Falayo said, if we look at the kind of identity, the kind of person or individual, or the kind of group of people who we will be pushing forward for advocacy, policy is a key meeting point. If the policy is there, although we have so many good policies in Nigeria anyway, but if there's a policy that can speak to manufacturing and localization of products to be manufactured or to be used when it comes to structure, if we expand energy generation to private solar energy licensing, We look at laying down of manholes to address pipes and cabling to create a much more conducive environment for right of way. If we begin to look at one step at a time when it comes to state governments that seem to not understand better, while internet is a key critical infrastructure that such states should embrace, then we would have addressed a lot of things that would also encompass the likes of content creators, either at the higher level or the lower level, or the end user, and in a nutshell, be able to address the challenge we are facing at the moment. I want to also take home something very strong from Ayotunde Koka, where he says that data sovereignty must be looked at from the African perspective. While we address our challenges in the idea of exchange, in the idea of data, which is digitization, we should also be looking towards such working groups that would start now and begin to lay a pathway for further advocacy. On our behalf, for the records, Adibumi Adiola Akimbo is the name. I'm CEO I'm CEO for DNS Africa, and I would be looking forward to participating actively in such working groups. Thank you for the audience. Have a nice day.
Okay, thank you very much for the contribution. Folu, parting words.
Well, I think a lot has been said here, and I fully agree that the establishment of such working groups will go a long way in making sure that along the way we begin to meet all our objectives. Definitely, Rome was not built in a day, so it's something that we should positively all look forward to, but I think it's a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris.
The working group approach is one of the good ones, with active timelines on each action. Number one. Number two, we as an industry, we need to come together with more collaborative approaches, leaving our brands behind. The brand we are handling is different, and this problem on the ground is different. So let's address the problem so that the brand can survive. If you come with, okay, I'm representing this company, so this is my problem. It's not my problem. It is an industry problem. It is a problem of Nigeria. So let's address that together, leaving the brands behind for first, so that we get to the right solutions.
Thank you, Dr. Krish. Mohammed.
Okay. Mine is that I'm happy with the turn-up of the audience and part of the organizers. We really appreciate you for being here, and all what we're talking about, the core objective is about peering, interconnection. So I hope that that will be a lesson learned for people that are here to find ways to collaborate, because most of the issues that we have in this country is around collaboration. If we're able to collaborate, most of the problems can be solved. All these issues of right-of-way, everything, including power. If you can have two companies together to collaborate to set up one power plant and all that. So it's more of collaboration. So please come next year. We look forward to seeing you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. From me, work items. Please, I'm asking you, because what usually happens is we sit down, we have these robust discussions. The office has let us go for 2 days, 3 days to come and attend stuff like this. We step out and we get caught up in the urgent, but maybe not as important things that we need to do. So I am committing all of the panelists, both remote and here, and those who have actively contributed to this session, I'm committing on their behalf. They don't have any choice. I'm moderator of the session. So please, don't wait till next year. You need to see outputs from us within the next 1 week, at least pointing a general direction. I'm also committing the NGNOG and NGPIF Secretariat to putting up some way for you to signify your availability to volunteer to this work that the working groups would be doing. Something that Ayotunde had mentioned earlier is that a lot of work is going on, a lot of engagements are ongoing, and we shouldn't be afraid to say it. There are multiple industry bodies working from wherever they have the strongest influence and the strongest relationships. We can, as a body, as a group here, an open group here, figure out how to work together so that those efforts are working at least in the same general direction, even though there may be different interests, however you look at the two. I'd like to thank you all. You've been wonderful. The house is still full. I don't know if it's because lunch has not been served, but you've been great. I'll hand over here, or before I hand over to the MC, okay, I shall hand over to the MC so he tells us what to do next. I suspect that we'll have to stand up for a group photo or something like that. All right, thank you very much. Mohammed, thank you. Thank you, Folu. Thank you, Dr. Krish. Thank you, Ayotunde. We cannot shake you over the internet, but it's been great having you.